During this course, I'm going to be kind of covering a general background, an overview of the StoryCorps organization and what that entails, and then also discuss their Thanksgiving-based initiative, which is the Great Thanksgiving Listen, where they invite people to record and interview elders, their parents, their grandparents, or possibly parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles having their children or grandchildren, nephews and nieces interview them. So we're going to dive in here. StoryCorps was started in 2003 by radio producer Dave Isay. And he began it at the Grand Central Terminal. He opened two recording booths, or a recording booth at the Grand Central Terminal, and then they also launched two other mobile recording booths that would go around the country and allow people to interview their friends, family, and loved ones. In 2005, some of their interviews began to be featured on NPR's Morning Edition, which might be where you've heard of it before. And then in 2010, they premiered the first series of animated shorts on TV and online. So they actually animated some of the stories that people were recording or segments of them. And then the Great Thanksgiving Listen project was begun in 2015 and is, again, tailored around interviewing, our elders in our lives and people who have spent 40, 50, 60 years and want to share some of that knowledge and have it be preserved and in the American oral history. To date, over 500,000 people have shared their stories, and that continues to go up. And what we at Fountaindale and other libraries are doing are just kind of trying to make sure our patrons are aware of these opportunities, as well as provide them with insight onto how to do these interviews, how to make sure the recordings come out good, what opportunities they have to share these recordings when they're done. And also with regards to Studio 300, we also have some other technology here that you can take advantage of when doing these interviews. Here's the booth located at Grand Central Terminal. It's still there. And this was a message from Dave Isay that he sent out this year. This Thanksgiving, consider joining tens of thousands of people across the country in an annual StoryCorps tradition, the Great Thanksgiving Listen. The concept is simple: honor a grandparent, a parent, or another elder whom you admire with an interview over the Thanksgiving weekend. Together, we can create connections at a fraught moment for so many of us. Dave Isay. So there it is. Basically, again, the goal is to interview a grandparent or a parent or an elder or two. We are going to be having a day specifically where we host a webinar that will be the day after Thanksgiving. And if you want to invite somebody that you'd like to interview to that webinar, we'll then record that interview for you and then edit it down if there's anything that needs to get cut or, people lose their train of thought. So if you want us to take care of the interview aspect, you can do it that way by joining us the day after Thanksgiving from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And we will conduct that interview or set up that interview. You're still asked the questions of the other person, but we will actually do the recording and the editing for you. At the core of StoryCorps is the interview. Typically, they're going to be about 40 minutes long. If that seems like a long time and you want to do a shorter one, that's fine. Usually they say the minimum they like their interviews to be is 20 minutes. And the reason for that is they don't want these to just be kind of, surface light conversations and interviews. They want to get to the meat and the bones of, the interviewee and their life story. And they want them to share some of the most interesting and important parts of their lives, if possible. They break down the interview process on their websites into kind of three parts: preparation, recording, and then saving and or publishing the interview. During the preparation phase, you're going to find somebody that you would like to interview. Maybe it's someone you admire, somebody, or it could be a relative you don't know much about, but you've heard, an interesting thing here or there about them, and you want to learn more. Once you find somebody, you'll obviously find a day where you can interview them, or if you're doing the day after Thanksgiving one, you'll let them know the day and the time, and then provide them with the link to the Zoom webinar. After that, you'll prepare some questions beforehand. Don't come empty-handed. The StoryCorps website has a bunch of questions and prompts that you can ask. In no way, shape, or form do you just have to ask those questions. You can go off topic. They might go on a tangent for 15 minutes, which is totally fine. And actually the point is for them to just kind of get into the conversation and start sharing parts of their life story. Once you've got your questions prepared and the date and the person you want to interview set, you're going to find a location. You should theoretically find the quietest, most comfortable room you can record in. Try not to be in a room where there's TVs on in the background, or near the kitchen or the furnace laundry room where there's noise coming from the different machines. And typically, not that anybody would have their windows open this time of year, but try to minimize the amount of ambient noise in both your room, and if you're doing a remote interview, which I'll go over in a little bit, make sure the other person is also in a relatively quiet room. And then even at the beginning of the process, let them know that they're going to have 3 different ways that this interview can be shared. And those ways, which I'll touch on here in a moment, are public, community, or private. During the actual recording session, you might want to ask a couple warm-up questions. Make sure the person you're interviewing is relaxed and comfortable, and kind of just loosen them up a little bit. If you want to start recording after those questions, you can. If you want to start recording before and record those questions as well, that's also fine. When you're doing the recording and actually interviewing the person, try to be an active listener while they're sharing their story. Don't just go off the script of prompts that you have in front of you. If they say something that really piques your interest, respond to that. Maybe delve into it more, ask them follow-up questions, or why they did things, or maybe how something made them feel after they share an event. How they felt at the time, and then possibly how they felt later on and how they feel about it now. And as I mentioned, they like the interviews to be 40 minutes. If you go a little over that, that's fine. But typically if you go under at least 20 minutes, again, so that you get to some interesting facts about the person. And then at the last part, during the saving and publishing of your story, you're going to take a picture or selfie of both you and the person you're interviewing. If you're in the same room, you can obviously take the picture together remotely. Each person will probably just take a selfie with either their webcam or their cell phone, and then add that picture to the file. As I mentioned, there are 3 ways that the interview can actually be shared. So once the interview's been done, it's going to get uploaded to the StoryCorps website. And there are 3 different settings for when that occurs: public, community, and private. If it's public, anybody who goes on the StoryCorps website can look at it. They don't have to be a member of StoryCorps. They don't have to have a StoryCorps account. Anybody could just go on the website and find that interview. If it's selected as community, then the interview is only available online for those who are members and have accounts on the StoryCorps Archives website. And if it's private, nobody on the actual website can go and see it. You'll get a private link that you can share with people. However, in all of these cases, even the private, the interview will still be, StoryCorps will still have access to the interview. For public and community, they can actually share snippets and parts of the interview on their programming. And then in all cases, public, community, or private, the interview is stored in the Library of Congress, which is actually one of the real cool things about StoryCorps, is that all of these recordings are stored there. And they're going to be saved in the Library of Congress for the rest of American future and history, for future generations to listen to. If you're recording on a remote device like an audio recorder or a computer, then before the interview is loaded onto StoryCorps, you would have the ability to edit the interview before it is published. If you're recording with the StoryCorps app or their remote recording software called StoryCorps Connect, then it will load the entire interview. And just want to reiterate, with the option of publishing, whether it's public, community, or private, that ultimately is up to the person who's being interviewed. If they say they're not comfortable with it being made on community and they want to keep it private, then that has to be honored. But if they're okay with it being community or public, then by all means you can select that for the privacy setting. And it can always be changed later on. So if they change their mind and they're like, you know, I'd rather it be community instead of public, then you can always go back and change that. So that's kind of how you do the recording. Now we're going to talk about the different options for actually conducting the interview. The first is the StoryCorps app, which you can download for iOS and Android devices. It's easy to use, it's private. You can still save it as private, community, or public. And you have the option of publishing it right away, or you can save it to the device actually. I'm going to click on this guy and go to their website. So this is the StoryCorps website. This is the page for the StoryCorps app, which was launched in 2015. And we come down here, so you can see they have all these kinds of starter guides, interview tips, as well as how to improve your sound quality. Obviously, if you have like a microphone that connects to the phone or your computer, then you can use that, and as well as finding a quiet room. Regarding safety tips for recording on the app during COVID, while it is encouraged that you don't interview people in person, if you are comfortable, maybe it's somebody you already live with and you know you're constantly around, and you want to interview them, then you can use the app because it's going to just use the microphone on the phone. It's not actually a phone call. It's just using the microphone and basically turning the phone into an audio recording device. It does recommend that you wash your hands and have your interview partner wash their hands before the interview. You can also clean the phone or wipe it with alcohol or some sort of Clorox wipe before and at the end of the interview. You should try to stay 6 feet away from the person you're recording, and hold the phone about 2 feet from your mouth, or set it up so that it's directly in between both of you. They also mentioned you can use a selfie stick or something to slide the phone back and forth. And again, they hold it between about 2 feet from themselves. And you can either pass it back and forth, or like I said, if it's a pretty quiet room and both people are talking fairly or projecting well, you could just place the phone directly in between. All right. The other option for doing primary option for recording a StoryCorps interview now is StoryCorps Connect, which is an online virtual video feed that records both audio from both computers. The video feed is just to allow people to see each other, to give them that more personal connection that you get from face-to-face contact, even if you know, you're not in the same room as the person. They found that the interviews tended to be a little more lively. So I'm going to go ahead and open the StoryCorps Connect page here. And so this was actually launched just in March of 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and allows people to connect remotely to one another. So if you're not living with somebody that you wanted to interview, or perhaps they are quarantined or they're you know, high risk, and they can't have any face-to-face contact with other people, then you still have this option to record them. And again, it has the getting started. It also has a list of great questions that you can reference here. I'm gonna go ahead and click on this, and that will just do a download. So go ahead and let that download. I'll go from that here in a second. Yeah. So that will just give you a big old list of questions here. So it has them broken into different groups: questions for anyone, questions related to the pandemic or health crises, questions for grandparents, and again, those are just to get you started, to kind of give you different ideas. You're more than welcome to come up with your own questions as well, but they have some here like, can you tell me about the person who has been kindest to you in your life, how you would like to be remembered, what their hopes are for you or your children, if you have any. Is there anything that you've never told, or that they've never told you, but they want to tell you now? What's their favorite memory of you or somebody else? And so, again, those are just some ideas to kind of, again, get it from just like, what did you do today? Or how did you spend your week, to get into something a little more meaningful, and really grow that connection with that person. So that's just one of the prompts they have on their website. And if you go to, whether you go to StoryCorps App or the StoryCorps Connect page, those great questions will be available there. StoryCorps Connect, very simple and self-explanatory. You're basically each going to log into an account. You're going to send them a link, and then they're going to join you in that little virtual remote interview session, and then you'll just click record when they're all ready, and then you'll conduct your 40-minute interview that way. They give some a couple more tips here, you know, for who you interview, and aim for 6 to 8 questions. So again, they don't plan on you just rapid firing. They want you to kind of dig into each of those questions a little and see how they respond to them. Once you've recorded the interview, you can also join the StoryCorps community to see other people's interviews. Those that are listed as community, you would need to log in, have an account on StoryCorps to actually be able to access, but you do already have access to the public ones. We'll go back to this. Okay. So now, if you don't want to use the app or the StoryCorps Connect for whatever reason, and you wanted to do an in-person interview with some of the technology available from Studio 300, we do have some equipment you can check out. So we have a variety of devices here. So we have an audio recorder, which is very similar to what you would do with the StoryCorps app. But you just take the recorder, you'd put it in between both people and hit record, or you could also pass it back and forth and pointing it at their mouths. You'd get a bit better sound from that, but it can also be a little, obstructive. Sometimes some people just want to leave it right in between. Likewise, you can use one of our USB microphones to connect to a computer as a microphone source. to get better audio than just using the onboard microphone that your computer might have. And if you have a iPhone or an iOS device like a iPad, you can use this little microphone here that, that plugs in and uses a downloadable app to record your interview that way on the app. And what that would do is that will allow you, again, to have that access to edit the interview before you actually upload it to StoryCorps, the StoryCorps archives. And if there's anything, you wanted to edit out, dead space, or, a lost train of thought, or, one of their questions, they didn't really have an answer for, and you just want to cut that out, you can do that. We do have limited availability, though. We only have about one of each of these devices that can be checked out for 5 days at a time. And those are available to anybody who has completed the Studio 300 orientation, which is available online to take. If you haven't already, you can actually complete a virtual orientation on studio300.org. If you want, once you've shared your files with the StoryCorps archive, you can actually also add them to the Fountaindale community page if you want to share it with the Fountaindale StoryCorps community. So we'll go here. So we have a couple interviews we did around the holiday season that families did, just asking some questions about their holidays, featured on our page right now. And we look forward to adding more interviews, both shorter ones and the 40-minute interviews to this page, and allow people to share that with the greater Fountaindale community here. And again, to put it on the Fountaindale page, it has to be listed as public or community. If you have it saved as private, then you don't have the option of adding it to the Fountaindale page. And then lastly, the StoryCorps, there's also some books and DVDs on StoryCorps. If you're interested in learning more about them, you can check out the book Listening is an Act of Love. It's also an animated movie now. All There Is Love Stories is another movie, and StoryCorps Out Loud are also available at Fountaindale and the other nearby libraries. That's pretty much it for the overview of the technology and tips for doing the StoryCorps interview. If you have any final questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you were looking to do the Zoom webinar option for the Great Thanksgiving Listen, you can register for that. Either go on the Fountaindale website and go to your events. Event calendar. And that is going to be on the 27th. StoryCorps, the Great Thanksgiving Listen. It is from 1 to 4. Obviously, you wouldn't have to be there for that whole time. You could come and do your interview at 1 o'clock, at 2 o'clock. And again, if you don't want to do the full 40-minute interview and you'd rather do like a 20-minute interview, that's fine. But we will have staff running the Zoom session and recording it and then editing it as needed afterwards. And then we'll get the other information before you go, how you want it saved, and it will be added to the StoryCorps and our own community content collection then. And the actual info for that Zoom webinar will be sent an hour before the program begins. So you want to make sure that both you and the person you're interviewing register for that class. Okay, well, thank you again for attending the webinar, and we look forward to hopefully hearing your interviews with friends and family members and sharing those with the Fountaindale community and the StoryCorps greater community.